Good afternoon. Today we're going to talk about reduced adverbial clauses. So first, a review. What are adverbs? Adverbs are words that describe nouns. For example, I quickly typed this sentence. In the above sentence, quickly is the adverb because it describes the verb typed. If you could just type an adverb in the chat box. What are adverbial clauses? An adverbial clause is a dependent clause that functions as an adverb. For example, in the sentence, when Tiago returned, he found that everyone had left. When Tiago returned would be the adverbial clause. It describes the verb found. Reduced adverbial clauses, by comparison, are adverbial clauses that no longer have a full verb phrase. We will now look at how they are formed. How to reduce adverbial clauses. If you'll recall, there was a trouble spot earlier about reducing relative clauses. We'll see that the process is similar here. So there are three ways to reduce an adverbial clause. If there is a verb phrase including the auxiliary verb be, if there is a verb phrase including the main verb be, and if there is no be verb in the verb clause. The clauses must be adverbial clauses of time, beginning with after, before, while, or since. In what other way can these words be classified? These four words are prepositions, which means that adverbial clauses that can be reduced will also be prepositional phrases. Something else to keep in mind is that the subject of the adverbial clause and the subject of the main clause must be identical. If there is a different subject for each clause, the adverbial clause cannot be reduced. This is important to remember. It's going to become important soon in this lesson. If you have to write it down quickly so that you don't forget it, please do that. So first we're going to look at a verb phrase including the auxiliary verb be. If the adverbial clause includes a form of the auxiliary verb be and a present participle, you drop the subject and the be verb. For example, while Matt was studying, he took notes. To reduce the adverbial clause, the subject Matt and the auxiliary form of be will be dropped. In this case, the auxiliary verb of be is was. So the new sentence will be, while studying, he took notes. Try these two examples. Before Roger was reading, he asked what pages to look at. While Dana was talking, I asked her for help. In the first sentence, the subject Roger and the auxiliary form of be are dropped. So the new sentence becomes, before reading, he asked what pages to look at. The second sentence cannot be reduced. There are two different subjects. The subject of the adverbial clause is Dana. The subject of the main clause is I. Now we'll look at a verb phrase including the main verb be. If the adverbial clause includes the main verb be, drop the subject and change the be form of a verb to being. For example, after I was late 5 times, I dropped the class. The subject I is dropped, and the be form was is changed to being. The new sentence becomes, after being late 5 times, I dropped the class. Try these two examples. After Jennifer was at the store, she stopped to get gas, and before Mia was in the pool, we had lunch with her. In the first sentence, the subject Jennifer is dropped, and the main verb be is changed to being. So was becomes being. The sentence now becomes, after being at the store, she stopped to get gas. The second sentence cannot be reduced. There are two different subjects. The subject of the adverbial clause is Mia, and the subject of the main clause is we. Now we'll look at when there is no be verb in the verb clause. If there is no form of a verb be in the adverbial clause, drop the subject and change the verb in the adverbial clause to a present participle. For example, in the sentence, since Jason has graduated, he has been looking for a job. The subject Jason is dropped, and has is dropped as well, and then graduated is changed to graduating. So the new sentence becomes, since graduating in June, he has been looking for a job. Now there's only one example for this one. It says try these, but there's only one example. While Esperanza has worked, she has been taking classes. Try that in the chat box. So in this sentence, the subject Esperanza is dropped, and so is the verb has, leaving us with, while working, she has been taking classes. Learner difficulties. Both learners of English and inexperienced native speakers of English will on occasion use the ing form in the adverbial clause when the subject of a clause is different from that of the adverbial clause. That should be when the subject of the main clause is different from that of the adverbial clause. So if we look at that sentence, after being late 5 times, the teacher told me to drop the class. That sentence is incorrect because the adverbial clause cannot be dropped in this sentence. The reason is that there are two different subjects. The subject of the adverbial clause is presumed to be I, even though it's not present, and the subject of the main clause is the teacher. So because there are two different subjects, the adverbial clause would not be able to be reduced in this sentence. While dancing, they celebrated the end of the trouble spots. In the chat box, type what the sentence was before it was reduced. Thank you for your cooperation.